Good evening, everyone. I'm Aerrence. I'm going to do sharing of story 41, The Country of the Blind. Part 1.
His name was
Nunez, and he was a mountaineer from the country near Quito.
He was an
intelligent man and a good mountain climber.
He was asked by
some Englishmen to take the place of the climber who was ill. He wanted to climb the great Mount Peto. Nunez decided to do it. With great effort, Nunez and the other climber slowly climbed up the almost vertical wall of rock. And when they were near the top of that ridge, they reached a narrow top of that rock and built a nice shelter there. Suddenly, the others realized Nunez was a wicked. He shouted and whistled, and there was no reply. They didn't sleep that night. In the morning, they could see the marks of his fall down the side of the mountain. He fell on the terrace, fall distant to the snow, and over the edge of the cliff. Far below, they could see trees blocking out in a narrow shut-in valley, the lost country of the blind. But they did not know that was the country of the blind. It looked like any other narrow valley. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aerrence. I'm going to do sharing of story 41, The Country of the Blind.
Bogota,
Nunez said. Bogota over the mountains.
A wild
man using wild words, said Pedro. Did you hear that? Bogota. His minds are only partly formed. He is only the beginnings of a speech.
A little
boy laughed, Bogota,
and he
touched Nunez slightly.
Yes,
Nunez said. A large city.
I come from the
great world where men had eyes and see.
His name's
Bogota, they said.
He stumbled,
said Correa. Stumbled twice as we walked there.
Bring him to the
elders.
They pushed
Nunez suddenly into the doorway of the dark room. There was only the light of a small fire at the end of the room. The crowd pushed him behind him and covered the doorway. Nunez felt someone's feet in the darkness. As he fell, his arm hit another person. He heard a cry anger and saw many hands holding him down. I fell down, he said. I couldn't see in this darkness. The people were quiet for a minute. Then the voice of Correa said, He is only partly formed. He stumbles as he walks and uses meaningless words.
May I sit up?
Nunez asked. I'll sit quietly.
They discussed
it and allowed him to sit up. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aerrence. I'm going to do sharing of Story 41, The Country of the Blind. The old man said Nunez must have been created from them. He said, You'll continue to develop, and you must have courage and do your best. All the people said that the old man was right, and they could encourage Nunez to try very hard to learn. The old man asked Nunez whether he knew how to sleep. Nunez said he did, but that before he slept he wanted food. They brought him llama's milk in a bowl and raw salted bread. Then the people went away to sleep, but Nunez didn't sleep at all. He sat up, thinking and resting. Sometimes see that unformed mind, no senses yet. How they don't even know they've been speaking to their king. I must let them understand. Let me think. He was still thinking when the sun set, and it was very beautiful that evening. He saw the soft red and gold upon the small fields and eyes was the most beautiful things he ever seen. He looked from the mountains to the strange little houses in the village, and suddenly felt very sad. He thanked God from all his heart that he was able to see. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aerrence. I'm going to read from Vocabulary Book, page 5. To discourage a man from cooking, 劝阻某男人煮饭。Discourage 动词劝阻阻碍。To convince a man to go camping 说服某位男人去露营。Convince 动词说服。To terrify a man to going outside 威胁某男子逼迫他外出。Terrify 是动词威胁恐吓。
take off landing 是飞机的起飞降落 ，take off 是片语飞机的起飞 ，land 动词登陆还有降落登陆跟降落 ，pass out 片语昏倒等于 faint，talk back 片语顶嘴 ，chemistry 名词化学课 ，lecture 动词讲课名词演讲 ，exposure 名词暴露曝光时间 ，signature 名词签名。His weight loss was gradual. 他的减重是循序渐进的。weight loss 减重 loss 名词减少 gradual 形容词逐步的循序渐进的。Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aerrence. I'm going to read The Country of the Blind. Bogota, Nunez said. Bogota over the mountains.A wild man using wild words, said Pedro. Did you hear that? Bogota. His mind is only partly formed. He has only the beginnings of speech. A little boy laughed. Bogota, and he touched Nunez lightly. Yes, Nunez said. A large city. I come from the great world where men have eyes and see. His name is Bogota, they said. He stumbled, said Correa.Stumbled twice as we walked here. Bring him to the elders. They pushed Nunez suddenly into the doorway of a dark room. There were only the light of a small fire at the end of the room. The crowd pushed in behind him and covered the doorway. Nunez fell over somebody's feet in the darkness. As he fell, his arm hit another person. He heard a cry of anger and felt many hands holding him down. I fell down, he said.I could see in this darkness. The people were quiet for a minute. Then the voice of Correa said, He is only partly formed. He stumbles as he walks and uses meaningless words. May I sit up? Nunez asked. I'll sit quietly. They discussed it and allowed him to sit up. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aerrence. I'm going to read The Country of the Blind. The voice of an older man began to question him. Nunez tried to explain the great world, the sky, the mountains, and sight, to these who sat in darkness. They neither believed nor understood anything he told to them. They didn't even understand many of his words. Nunez was surprised.He didn't know that these people had been alone in the valley for 14 generations. Their blindness caused them to forget the names for all things of sight. They had no interest in anything outside the valley. Slowly, Nunez realized that his ability to see and describe his wonderful world meant nothing to them. They thought his words were only the words of a partly formed person. At last, he stopped talking.and listened quietly as the elders of the blind men talked to him. He told Nunez how the world, and he meant their valley, had been first an empty place in the rocks. The llamas and a few other animals had come. Then men and angels. The angels sang and made fluttering sound, but no one could touch them. Nunez wondered about that until he thought of birds. The old man said,Time is dived into the warm and the cold. It is good to sleep in the warm and work during the cold. Nunez thought, It is now day and it is warm. They would be asleep if I hadn't come. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aerrence. I'm going to read The Country of the Blind.The old man said Nunez must have been created to learn from them. He said, You will continue to develop and you must have courage and do your best. All the people said that the old man was right, and they too encouraged Nunez to try very hard to learn. The old man asked Nunez whether he knew how to sleep. Nunez said he did, but that before he slept he wanted food. They brought him llama's milk in a bowl and rock salted bread.Then the people went away to sleep, but Nunez didn't sleep at all. He sat up, thinking and resting.
Sometimes he laughed, unformed by no senses yet. How they don't even know they've been speaking to their king. I must let them understand. Let me think. He was still thinking when the sun set. It was very beautiful that evening. He thought the soft red and gold upon the snowfields and ice was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. He looked from the mountains to the strange little houses of the village, and suddenly felt very sad. He thanked God with all his heart, and he was able to see. Thank you for listening.